Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Hannah and I make all kinds of videos around homemaking and mom life, but today I'm going to be showing you how to make homemade salsa. So we will actually be over at my parents' house in this video, and one of the main reasons that I do a lot of my canning at my parents' is that they have a gas range and I have a glass top electric stove, and it is not recommended to can on a glass top because there is a risk that you could shatter it. So that's why we'll be over at my parents' house. But I hope that you enjoy this video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. First thing that we're doing is just washing up all of the tomatoes and giving them a good rinse. And we are using canning tomatoes from Sweet Corn Charlie's. If you live in northern Indiana, I'm sure that you've heard of Sweet Corn Charlie's, but if you haven't, they are a farm that has a lot of different produce stands in the northern Indiana area. And of course, the name Sweet Corn Charlie's, they sell a lot of sweet corn, but they also have tomatoes and a lot of other produce as well. So canning tomatoes are their seconds. So tomatoes that have some blemishes and that they don't sell at the stand as your regular slicer tomatoes, they will sell for a reduced price as canning tomatoes. So that's what we're using today, and they work perfectly fine because most of the blemishes on tomatoes are not deeper than the skin. So once you remove the skin, which we'll do here in a couple of minutes, you pretty much get rid of any blemishes. There were a few that had an actual bad spot we had to cut out, but that's pretty rare. But you can use any type of tomato that you want. Generally, firm, fleshy tomatoes are what you want to look for when you're making salsa. Now that all the tomatoes are washed, it's time to cook them. So we just have a big stock pot full of boiling water on the stove, and we're just going to add a few tomatoes at a time to the boiling water and let them cook for about 3 to 4 minutes. You just want to cook them until you can see the skin starting to peel off. And then once they're cooked, we transfer them to a sink full of ice water, and we let them cool down for another 3 to 4 minutes to stop the cooking and just to cool them down so that they're easy to handle for the next step. Now we have to peel and core the tomatoes. So you can see that the skin of the tomato basically falls off once it's been boiled and cooled, so it's really easy to remove with your fingers. But you also have to core the tomatoes. And this is not like coring an apple where you have to remove the entire core that goes all the way through the apple. All you really have to do with a tomato is remove the top portion. So cutting about a ½ inch to an inch out of the top where the core is all you really need to do. So just use a paring knife, and it's really easy to just slice that part out. This is also where you would remove any bad spots that the tomato might have. Again, we didn't encounter that very much with these tomatoes, even though they have blemishes on the skin. But of course, if there's a bad spot, just cut it out at this step. And now we have to take those peeled tomatoes and dice them up. And let me preface this by saying we are not recommending that you do it the way we are doing it in this video. Obviously, this is not the safest way to do it because I am using a sharp knife in my bare hands. I'm not using a cutting board. You'll see later in the video that we also don't use gloves when we're handling hot peppers. Let's just say that we are very old school when it comes to how we can and how we're making our salsa. So I am not recommending this or saying that this is a safe method. This is just what we did because it's what works best for us. But it doesn't really matter if you don't get them diced perfectly because the tomato will break down more as it cooks, because after we add more ingredients, we're going to go ahead and boil it and cook it again. So the tomato will break down further. You don't have to make sure that all of your, dices are perfect and even, because you really won't be able to tell in the final product. But I'm trying my best to keep them as uniform as possible. what we're doing now is just chopping up some onion and fresh garlic. So we are using a food processor to chop the onion. And then I am using a Pampered Chef garlic press for the fresh garlic. And this is one of my favorite Pampered Chef items. In my opinion, it's totally worth the money, and I'll try to link it below. But fresh garlic definitely makes a world of difference as opposed to using like a canned minced garlic. So again, it takes a little bit extra time, but it's definitely worth it for that fresh flavor. Next, we had to chop up a couple other ingredients. So we are just chopping some cilantro. You can just kind of rough chop it and remove the stems. And then we're also doing fresh jalapenos. And like I said, we're not using gloves in this video, but I would recommend using gloves, especially if you're going to completely dice them by hand. We just kind of de-seeded them and then put them in the food processor because we really wanted a fine chop, and the food processor works great for that. And another thing is, if you want a little bit more heat, you can leave the seeds in. Most of the heat in peppers is in the seeds, and so we completely removed the seeds from these jalapenos, and the salsa was pretty mild, so next time I think I might leave a few of the seeds in just to amp the heat up a little bit, but you do want to be careful because you can get pretty spicy pretty quick when you leave the seeds in. So this recipe actually calls for fresh Anaheim green chilies that you roast and then dice. But we looked everywhere at our local grocery stores and we could not find fresh Anaheims. So what we did was just substitute canned diced green chilies. And the flavor was still really good in the salsa, but I'm guessing that fresh chilies would have added even more flavor. So I definitely recommend fresh if you can find them, but if not, then the canned diced green chilies are a good option. So we're just going to add the chilies to the tomatoes and then add all of our other additional ingredients as well. So we're going to add our onion, garlic, our jalapeno, cilantro, and then apple cider vinegar, dried oregano, cumin, salt, and sugar. And I will have the recipe linked in the description box along with how many tomatoes we used and all of the ingredient amounts that we used. So once you've added everything in, then just stir it up and make sure everything is incorporated really well. And then we're just going to put it back on the stovetop, bring it to a boil, and then reduce it to a simmer and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. And now it is time to fill the jars. And this is hands down my favorite part of any canning that we do. I don't know why, I guess I just find it therapeutic or something. So what I'm doing is just using a little funnel to help me ladle the salsa into the jars. And then I am just using this clear plastic pick to just get the air bubbles out of the jar. Then I'm going to dry off the rim of the jar with a dry cloth. This will just help us get a really good seal. And then I'm using a little magnetic tool to pick my jar lid up out of the water. And we always like to make sure that our jars and our lids are really hot when we fill them, because all of that will just help us get a really nice tight seal. So we put our lids in a saucepan, cover them with water, and boil them until right before we're ready to use them. And then we also put our jars in the dishwasher, run it on like a sanitize cycle, and then leave them in there so that they're nice and hot, and then we'll just take one out at a time when we're ready to fill them. So then I'm just going to put the lid on, screw on the ring, and place them in the water bath. Also, this is random, but I need you guys to comment below and tell me what you think of the mom short trend. I don't know. My husband calls them my grandma shorts, and I know they're not super flattering, but they're trending right now. So, gotta stay on trend. So let me know if you guys like them or if you think they're ugly, because I don't really know. Summer's almost over, so I won't have to worry about this for long. Once all of the jars are filled, then we fill the hot water bath with water about an inch over the top of the jars, bring it to a rolling boil, let it boil for about 15 minutes, set for 5, and then remove the jars and let them cool. And that's it. This is a really simple recipe, but the flavor was outstanding. It would be great as a small batch for fresh salsa, and it also works perfect for canned salsa. So let me know in the comments if you try this recipe and what you think of it, or if you have your own recipe for salsa that you think is the best. Let me know what it is, and I would love to try it out. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.